Man, fucking meow!
For console users on Assetto Corsa. Just bear me one moment while I go into the server. So what we're aiming to do in this video is going through the controller settings, what they do and what you can do to make your lap times quicker on the console.
Green light, give it all you can.
Just turn the audio down a little bit. So we'll start by looking into the controls and what they do. So I personally have vibrations turned off. I don't really like them, and I also have them turned off on my controller settings also. I'm currently using the Elite 2 controller for Xbox. I also really like this controller because you can adjust the thumbsticks and change the stiffness of them, so it helps for smooth steering. We'll start with Dead Zone. Dead Zone, you can either have it 0% or 45%. That means the higher the value. So say for example you have 10%, it means the first 10% of input on your analog stick isn't registered. So if you have like stick drift, then it would mean that the first 10% aren't picked up by the game, so that if your analog stick isn't straight, it won't recognise that first percent. It won't put you at a disadvantage necessarily, but it just means that that percentage of the steering input isn't registered. Speed sensitivity is the biggest thing. That determines how much your car can turn when at speed. So, for example, on 0%, it will allow the wheel to turn as much as realistically as possible when at speed. If you have it, say, on 100%, at low speed, it's not really noticeable, but once you start to hit higher speeds, you will notice the wheel will turn a lot less and less. So to maximise your lap time ability, you really want to be using it on 0%. It might be weird to get used to at first, but it is the best choice to go for. It would also mean that on some corners you will scrub your tyres a little bit. So I'm at Paul Ricard right now, so for example when going around the sweeper, you'll notice that steering input the wheel will overturn and you will hear a little tyre screech. For that you'd have to just put slightly less input maybe, so that you still turn enough on the steering input, but you're not scrubbing the tyres in effect. But 0% would allow you to run the fastest lap times possible. The steer filter, that dictates how quickly the wheel centres when you are not steering or putting any steering input in. So if you have it on 0%, the wheel, if you flick to the left or the right of your analog stick, and then you let go or centre it straight away, the wheel will instantly straighten up. So if you have it on 100%, it will take longer for the wheel to straighten up. So that is more of a personal preference setting, but I prefer to have it on a lower setting because I try to smooth steer on exits for as smooth steering as possible. Whenever I do flick the stick for the smallest adjustments possible, it recenters the car so that I lose less time basically of the car still turning. The stair speed affects how much you can turn left to right consistently. So with 100%, it basically means that I'm allowed to do what I want to do. There's nothing stopping me from putting any input from doing a chicane. The stair gamma I've currently set to 2.5. I feel like having it in the middle. The highest value is 4 and the lowest is 1. I feel like putting it in the middle is the most comfortable for me. Steer assist you have to have enabled. It's kind of worded badly on this game. Steer assist on any other game would mean it would, when you turn into the corner, it would help lean the car into the corner. That's what it does in Forza. But steer assist is basically what, if you had a steering wheel, would be your wheel lock assist. So what steering assist does is it dictates making the wheel realistic when you steer. So we'll do an example of it. So we'll drive out of the garage. Just quickly load this up. I know it won't be horrible. So we'll get this one for example. So with it enabled, when you're driving at speed, it will allow the wheels to turn basically realistically, so that you're not oversteering when going around the corner. So we'll just do the first few corners to get an example. So when I'm turning the steering wheel here, if I full lock it to the left, as you can see, it turns realistically so that the wheel isn't overturning, like that. So when I flick left or right, it limits itself. If we stop for a second, go back to controls, and we disable it, it will now mean that it will attempt to full wheel lock every single time in realistic. So doing this kind of wheel rotation lock is probably possible at these speeds, but when you get to the high speed corner, any kind of high speed corners, you just see that it's over rotating the wheel, and you have to precisely turn the wheel the analog stick the smallest amounts, which, I mean, it's very hard to do consistently. I could probably do it on a more comfortable camera at chase, but it's not something I would want to do all the time, because it makes the steering hypersensitive, and like I said, unrealistic. You shouldn't be able to turn a wheel this much rotation at these speeds like that, for example. So it's a very, even though it's considered an assist, it's a function that's built into other racing games, but is optional in this game. On Forza or Gran Turismo, for example, there's not an assist to change that. It's permanently set. So on Forza, it will always turn to whatever the car can do at a limit. That's how it basically works. It allows the car to turn at its realistic limit without oversteering the wheel, unless you're some super strong human who can rotate a wheel 360 degrees whilst doing 200 kilometers. That is the point of that assist. The next one is the assists. One thing I want to point out is stability control. Most leagues will not allow stability control, especially on the PC platform. Some maybe smaller leagues might allow it on consoles, maybe even on PC. How stability control works is when your car is in what is considered a loss of control, it will straighten the car up so that you are in control of the car. The pros of this is it's literally impossible to spin out. Anytime you go into a corner and you maybe slide too much on the braking, or you try trail braking and your car catches a little slide because, I don't know, maybe you have too much rake in your car, for example, it will save the car. It will stabilise the car for you if you have it on max, for example. So we'll show an example of that now. So we'll put it on 100%. We'll rewarm the tyres, and we will basically full send it into turn 1. and it will show what it does. So if I flick the car in, oh god, it basically doesn't spin the car up. It just keeps it going where it is. As it goes, I actually don't think I turned it on then and saved it. Yes, I forgot to hit A. Okay, right, so now it's saved on. So that was an example, of when you don't have it turned on. Your car will just keep in its slide and will stop the car from... the car will continue to do what its natural motion is. So now I'm full sending it again, but as you see, the car is straightening out. So you see it on the wheel, look, as it turns the wheel, it counterclockwise the wheel for you. It's a bit of an unrealistic feature. Like, it means that you can no matter how hard you slide the car, it will save it. So we'll drive down the straight here. I'm not too sure why the track's set to 47 minutes past midnight. I think the default setting was set to 10 PM, but I'm not too sure why it's carried over. So we'll drive down the straight here, and I will really aggressively turn into this corner with the stability control turned on, and you'll see it corrects the car. See, the car slides, but it straightens up. So it basically makes it impossible for you to spin out and very consistent. The only downside of filter running in stability control is that it makes your car not hit its peak limit of turning ability. Anytime it notices a bit of slide like that, whenever you put the power down, it straightens the car up. It's useful for exits, I guess. But I feel like for potential lap times, it definitely damages your lap because it doesn't allow the car to fully turn to its potential, because slip angle is a very important thing when driving. Getting slip angle is what makes the difference between what people consider alien and a good driver. So that is the negative side of running stability control, and with obviously turned off, you allow the car to drive the way it should and to its limit, which means that you will require a lot more car control and a lot more precision. With regards to setting cars up on a controller, you should always focus on like the angle of the car, for example. So if you overrake a car, for example the Porsche or the Bentley, those cars are really angled. The Porsche is a really good example, or even the Bentley, like I said. When the car has too much rake, with your aero variation, the car will have too much air getting under the back of the car, which will make the car slide into the corners, which is a lot less controllable when you're on the controller with stability control turned off, for example. So it's imperative that when setting your car up, you don't over-angle your car, you run a wing that's suitable. I feel like on controller, high wing on most generic tracks that are not Paul Ricard, Monza or Spa, for example, high speed tracks, but at tracks like Brands, even Imola, any track like that, Nurburgring, I feel like full downforce in a lot of cars is the best way for a controller, because it's all about maximising the turning potential when on controller, because there's less precision and less ability on the controller, as you cannot dictate how much steering input the game makes, as steer assist limits that. Sometimes you'll see the car counter steering, whereas if you're on a wheel you would be able to hold the steering wheel there and the car would keep its limit turning. On a controller sometimes you get that counter steer moment and stuff like that. That's just part of the game's input. So obviously there is less potential on a controller, but you can still be up there on the controller like myself. It's just having the ability to do it and understanding the game's physics. Obviously controllers setups on the car make a difference, but you have to set the car up to suit that. Some setups that I can make, some wheel users can use, but it's important that you find that balance to where the car's got loads of turning but controllable at the same time, with only a tiny little slide, which is called the slip angle, to where the car will slightly have tiny amounts of oversteer to create more turning. But I feel like for anyone on the controller, you should use these controller settings. These are the best settings to have, and I feel like they are what allow the most turning and fastest lap times once you get used to them. Obviously controller bindings are all preference. Obviously I have the Elite controller, so I have the paddles. So for example, 2 of my paddles are mapped are mapped to the same as my left and right stick, so they become my indicators whenever I need to turn them on. I have one of my right paddles as to flash my lights, and then my left one is my MFD menu, so I'm not pressing my D-pad at the same time as driving, so I can use my paddles then, as I don't really want to take my hand off or my thumb off the analog stick whilst I'm steering. But that's a little controller guide for everyone. I hope everyone can find that useful. So thanks for tuning in.